Everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an overview and review video on 5 luxury pumpkin fragranced candles. But first, if you're new to Touch the Fire Twice, welcome. My mission here is to share my love and passion for fine home fragrance as an enthusiast, an educator, a reviewer, to inspire you to increase your own fragrance knowledge and understanding, ultimately enhancing the scent memories that you create. If you want to learn more about what I do, why I do it, and how I do it, you can check out my website at TouchTheFiretwice.com, and please do give me a follow over on Instagram, also at Touch the Fire Twice, and subscribe here. So this video is something a bit outside of the norm. Typically I just do my in-depth sniff comparison reviews, maybe some hauls, some educational things along the way, but I really wanted to dig into pumpkin fragrances, talk a little bit about literally what is the fragrance of pumpkin, raw pumpkin, roasted pumpkin, the variations on pumpkin, how it is expressed in fine fragrance, home fragrance in general, and then discuss 5 luxury brand pumpkin fragrances, talking through the different variations of pumpkins. Is it going to be smoky, woody, spicy, sweet, gourmand, true to life, conceptual, many different categories within pumpkin. So we will talk through those, and then there will be one non-luxury honorable mention that is perhaps my favorite pumpkin fragranced candle of all time. We'll save that for the end because I really want to focus on the luxury candles within this video. And if you are familiar with my channel, you'll know that I do reviews on a wide array of brands. I love some of the mass market Bath & Body Works, easy to get for $8 to $10 candles, but I will also dig into and explore some really higher end, admittedly sometimes expensive candles as well, to understand what is the difference between your mass market, your masstige, as well as your prestige, luxury, high-end, fine fragrance brands. There's good and bad across both. That is the one thing I want to say, is it's not about dollars equal quality. Typically you're going to get a higher quality, but not always. And doesn't mean you're getting a low quality if you're paying $8 for a candle. But today, for those who are thinking, I might want to explore, I want to do something a little bit different than the candles I'm used to, these could be some potential good options. Some hits, maybe a miss here and there, but I want to talk through them with you. Now let's talk about pumpkin in fragrance. So it really can be true to life or a spectrum all the way to conceptual. And when we think of the fragrance of pumpkin, let's talk about fresh pumpkin. So there are 2 primary organic compounds within fresh pumpkin, so the flesh of that gourd when you're scooping it out and you're carving that jack-o'-lantern that you're smelling. The first one is cis-3-hexanonal, which is an organic compound which brings that green, grassy, cut leaves, gourd, raw scent that you're used to in fresh pumpkin. And then you also have diacetyl, which offers sort of a buttery, rich fragrance. And interestingly, diacetyl is actually also used in artificially flavored movie theater butter popcorn. When you think of a cooked or roasted pumpkin, like anything, it really does shift and change both chemically and in the fragrances that come from it. So those compounds evolve from the raw form and then almost will offer that burnt roasted note thanks to 2-methylbutanol and furfurol, which is a sugar decomposition product. Think that sort of grain, oat-like fragrance that comes in that rich roasted pumpkin flesh. A little bit sweet, kind of burnt, toasted, warm. And so stepping out of the science lab there, those are some of the compounds that are responsible for the fragrances we smell, both in the actual pumpkins, raw or cooked, and in fine fragrance, home fragrance, the different facets and variations that you can have expressed. Now, often you may actually have a pumpkin fragrance in name only, meaning that it doesn't have either that rich, roasted, burnt, oat-like fragrance or that green, gourdy, buttery, raw fragrance. Quite often you're just getting the spices there. So what is pumpkin spice? So McCormick & Company, the spice company that I think most folks are familiar with, actually introduced pumpkin spice in 1934, which was just a few years after canned pumpkin made its debut. Officially, the pumpkin spice then was a blend of cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and allspice, though there are, of course, variations in different brands will sometimes add star anise or clove. Now let's dig into this overview of these 5 luxury pumpkins. First up, we're going to talk through a gourmand that I would consider in a spicy, cozy category, and that is Nest's Pumpkin Chai. This was first launched with Nest in 2009 and has been a classic ever since then. You can actually see my in-depth sniff and comparison review of that here from a couple years back. You can see I've burned almost all the way through this one. This really is a beautiful expression of a fairly true-to-life pumpkin where you're going to get a bit of that buttery, fresh carved gourd notes, but a heavy hit of those warming, almost, as they say, pumpkin chai, some chai spices. So you've not got just your traditional cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, allspice, but as they say, wild pumpkin and spicy masala, combined with cardamom, ginger, and cinnamon to create the coziness you crave. And I would agree with that. And this is similar to what is my all-time favorite non-luxury pumpkin from Bath & Body Works, which we'll get to at the end of the video. Similar to that one if you're familiar. And there is a bit of a ginger in here that is not dissimilar to the Nest crystallized ginger and vanilla bean. This is certainly in the spice category because there's a heavy hit from masala spices in here. So you've got a bit of cardamom, you've got a good dose of ginger, certainly cinnamon, likely a bit of nutmeg, but it's not your red hot cinnamon bomb that you sometimes get in the mass market candles. This one has a bit more of a nuance because it is leaning into spices, more like a masala chai versus just a traditional pumpkin pie spice. Really nice if you want something that is super autumnal, fairly traditional, not too far off from what you already are familiar with, but a bit of an elevation coming with it. Then we'll move on to one that was new to me this year, which is the Snif Half-Baked Pumpkin Smash. You can see my in-depth sniffing comparison review of that here, just from 2024. And getting this one, again, with the luxury candles, you're often gonna have a nice unboxing experience, and rarely, but sometimes, a nice lid here as well. Now for me, the Half-Baked Pumpkin Smash really exists in a rich, warm, toasty category. It's not quite your sugar sweetie, on the nose, obvious pumpkin pie spice by any means, but it does evoke that similar rich, warm, autumnal harvest gathering feeling. As I always say, I love when fragrance is transportive and evokes a mood, moment, memory, space, place, or time. This is beautiful. There is truly a burnt sugar note to this. They call it a bruleed orange. Not so much orange in there, but perhaps a little bit of an orange essence, the actual oil, not the juice. Also some cardamom in here. They say whiskey, which is really going to be more, I think, the whiskey barrels, because if you have a burnt or singed whiskey barrel, which is an oak barrel, that's going to bring in some caramel, some vanilla, some roasty toasty, comforting vibes. There's a little bit of sweetness from a maple in there, some roasted cacao or cocoa as well, and happily some of that roasted pumpkin flesh like we talked about earlier. For me, it is cooked down, condensed into a really thick, dark paste almost. You would look at it and it would be almost this dark after you cook it down as the bright yellowish orange. It's gonna really cook down into this concentrated essence of pumpkin, and it brings it all out in here. This really is a beautiful, very much could go deep into the season. Not overly sweet. You would think something called a smash and the marketing for it has, ooey gooey drips on it. It's not just an artificial caramel explosion, which you can either get things that are too ooey gooey sweet on the nose or overly spiced. This is a really authentically spiced, warm, rich, burnt sugar, borderline woody pumpkin fragrance. Also, if you're interested in this, I do know that they were doing a sale, sort of end of fall season sale on some of their Smash candles, and I am in their affiliate program. If you'd like to get 10% off, you can use code Joshua10, Joshua10. This was not given to me. I purchased this with my own money. I did join their program because I'm a fan of Snif and want to explore them more, and if you want 10% off, you can do that. We're moving now to Glasshouse Fragrances in season pumpkin spiced cake. This would be your, let's call it the sweet treat category. Opening this up, now I purchased this, I believe it was actually 2 years ago. I did a couple of reviews, including a brand introduction for Glasshouse Fragrances. I really enjoyed, they had a movie night candle that was a beautiful blend of just walking into a confectionery shop, like a candy shop meets old-fashioned soda jerk and milkshake and malteds type of feeling. And I really like that candle. This one, really beautiful vessel here. This is a 2-wick candle. You may know where I'm going with this. You can see there's a pretty rough burn on this. I will just read the brand's story on this to give them some credit for what they are trying to develop and share here. They describe in season as a crackling fire, a nutty roasted brew of cinnamon, nutmeg, and piping hot pumpkin to conjure the toasty comforts of the season. Notes include coconut, orange, pumpkin, nutmeg, cinnamon, clove, cumin, maple, caramelized sugar, musk, and vanilla. My nose on it, this is a big fat fail for me. And I hate to say it, and it's no hate to Glasshouse Fragrances. I respect anyone trying to go out there and create candles, certainly luxury fine fragrance candles. It is a beast out there. It's a very, very complicated process. Speaking as an enthusiast here. But this candle is a big fat flop, unfortunately for me, because first of all, though it is 2 wicks, it will not pull out. Now, as I always say, with many luxury candles, or any single wick candle, frankly, you often have to baby it, put maybe a little bit of aluminum foil on it, get an even wax pull that off, and then it goes to town and you're fine. Most of these here, in one way or another, have to have that sort of babying. This one with 2 wicks certainly should not require that. And even with that, it just really did not pull out well at all. I lit this once or twice in 2022, tried it again now for the purposes of this review, let it burn for 3 or 4 hours, never fully pulled out in a 72-degree room temperature room without a draft, and frankly, almost scentless. Getting my nose in it here, vaguely sweet, a little bit of like a Rice Krispie sort of cereal sweetness to it. But when it comes to nutmeg, cinnamon, clove, a nutty roasted brew, big fat fail. So I'm not trying to call them out or certainly not shame Glasshouse Fragrances. I don't know if this was, an issue with the batch back when they poured this, but there's no excuse for that for a candle that is retailing for what, $40, $50, $60 potentially. And for me, actually, this was the last Glasshouse Fragrances candle that I purchased because it really, in this case, was a waste of my money. And so cannot recommend this, but wanted to just show you, not to make an example out of them, but to show that just because something is a luxury or expensive fragrance or candle doesn't mean it's going to be a hit or successful. So hopefully in the years since I purchased this, they have reformulated, reevaluated, relaunched. Can't say I'm certain, but I did want to call this out, frankly, also because, let's be honest, I spent the money on it. It wasn't cheap. I was excited based on the notes and one of the other candles I had from them, thinking this could be really beautiful. And unfortunately, it just is not. I wouldn't take this for free at this point. That is my review, unfortunately, for In-Season Spice Pumpkin Cake. Moving along to a couple of true hits, though. Let's move to, as I think a lot of you know, if you watch my channel, one of my favorite brands is LAFCO New York. They have the most beautiful elevated vessels and fragrances. I really enjoy all the work they put out, and this, of course, was no exception. This is their 2024 limited edition launch of LAFCO Pumpkin Seed and Sandalwood. You can view my in-depth sniff and comparison review here for that one, but let's open this up. And again, their vessels are just truly next level. You can see the mica in there, just that copper glitter swirled in the hand-blown glass. A really nice hefty 15.5 ounce single wick candle. Like I said before, though I always seek the good, I will share my critiques, and LAFCO's no exception to, especially for these larger 15.5 ounce versus their 6.5 ounce single wicks. They often will need some babying with that foil. For me, the ultimate performance and frankly the unique and strong fragrances that come from LAFCO really make that sort of babying worth it. And I failed to mention, for me, this really exists in certainly gourmand, but an elevated and reimagined gourmand. So this is for folks who really want to experiment and try something a little outside of the norm that's not so much, again, the obvious direct autumn spices pumpkin that you can find anywhere. This, as LAFCO says, has earthy woods, herbaceous fennel, a sophisticated gourmand. There's anise, black pepper, a bit of a spicy, almost herbal green warmth to it, and then a velvety base of patchouli and sandalwood, bringing that rich, again, velvety sweetness that you get from your sandalwoods and the not quite camphoraceous, but the green, bright earthiness of patchouli. This is really lovely. This could almost be, frankly, a year-round fragrance if you really love it. There's no reason this couldn't be burned throughout the year because it doesn't say cinnamon, nutmeg, pumpkin. As I said in my review, I wouldn't mind a little bit more of that in here, so it does say, ooh, that's such a beautiful warm fall scent. As it stands, it's a beautiful warm scent. It just doesn't scream autumn for me, and I'm a seasonal burner in some sense. I do enjoy some of that, but that doesn't take away from truly, this is one of those, it's a good candle when mid-review, mid-sentence, you keep taking little whiffs and wafts of it. And it's just, as is often the case with LAFCO, they bring fragrances that they're not copying, they're not trying to jump on a trend. They're creating these in-depth, masterfully blended fragrances where they're so unique, you've never really smelled something like it. So if you want to explore and kind of stretch outside of the typical boundaries of what you think a pumpkin fragrance might be, certainly check out the LAFCO New York Pumpkin Seed and Sandalwood. Then we'll move on to our last luxury candle, though again, as I keep saying, there will be one more candle at the end here. But I want to move into I'd say not even truly gourmand, more of a woody, smoky category, because there are, think of the feu de bois, the firewoods, the burning woods candles that are so popular that we really love to have on those cooler evenings. And so for that one, we're going to use Trapp's Fireside Pumpkin. Simply say the notes are New England pumpkin, smoky spices, and smoldering coals. And really, I wanted something that would share with us the woody, smoky category, because there are many candles. Bath & Body Works has a fair number of those, your pumpkin bonfires, your pumpkin cloves. Any feu de bois candle from any brand, both mass market and luxury, is going to have that woody, smoky, think even your Marshmallow Fireside at Bath & Body Works, just sort of the embers, a bit of that richness of the woods, not quite amber, not quite charcoal burnt, but that really rich, warm, and slightly sweet spice that you get from a woody, smoky fragrance. In this case, this is no exception. This is a very nice expression. I would say that this is something where, unlike LAFCO, that pumpkin seed and sandalwood fragrance stands on its own. There's really nothing that smells to me like that. This Fireside Pumpkin, you could find a variation of this across many brands, and that's not a bad thing. Everyone has, certain categories that they have to hit because that's what people want to purchase and that's what they're looking for. And there are nuances that make each of them unique and different, and this is really nice. One thing I will call out is it has a fairly solid performance. I tried testing this out a couple of burns without putting any assistance on the top, and it pulled out almost all the way. There's a bit of a lip there where it may have canyoned, so probably needed a bit of help, but it pulls out fairly quickly. This is an easy kind of quick burn. This is their 7-ounce candle, retails usually for somewhere between $20 and $30, so kind of that mid-market luxury. And they say that it combines smoking white birch logs with New England pumpkin to create a warm and inviting fragrance. Now they say smoldering coals. Don't think charcoal briquettes, but certainly, it leans into, this is the closest to a true Fireside Hearth Feu de Bois candle from the 5 that I reviewed here. The pumpkin, this is more spiced, I'd say. There's a sweetness to this, but you don't immediately think pumpkin in an obvious way that you do, say, with the Nest or maybe even with the Snif. But there's just enough in there that it's not simply the birch, woody charcoal. There's obviously more than the 3 notes in here. They don't give us the full top, middle, bottom. There's probably 8 to 12 notes in all of these fragrances. There is a sweetness. More of the sweetness comes from almost like a cinnamon. This is certainly even more so than, say, the spices in your pumpkin chai. You've got some burnt embers and burnt wood in here, which is more of an evening fragrance, a bit more intense. I wouldn't even necessarily say more rich, because the sweetness is not a heavy, roasty, toasty like the Snif candle, where you've got some of that maple bourbon with some little bit of caramel, the bruleed orange. This is more of a spiced smoky. Very nice, and when you want that rich, warm hearth fragrance, really taking this one deeper into the winter months, this can certainly do it for you. Now, you probably already guessed, if you're familiar with my content and you've watched any of my videos in the past, you'll know that my probably all-time favorite pumpkin fragrance is from good old Bath & Body Works, and that is their pumpkin carving, also known as pumpkin patch, heirloom pumpkin, maybe the perfect pumpkin, but for the past decade or so, pumpkin carving. The notes they tell us are simply freshly carved pumpkin, spiced pumpkin seeds, and smooth brown sugar. Some folks think of this as a pumpkin pie candle. Disagree. Some folks think it's spicy. I disagree. Their sweet cinnamon pumpkin is spicy. To me, though I've never done an in-depth Snif comparison review on this, but I talk about it often enough, I feel like I have over the course of many videos, it has that truly authentic pumpkin flesh, kind of a balance between, it's sort of that freshness, like again, that buttery, the diacetyl, the buttery fresh gourd, with a little bit of the roasted toasted, but not deeply into that. And when it comes to spices, they say spiced pumpkin seeds. There's just a little bit of spice to this, but it is the smallest amount. I wouldn't even say there's the full array of pumpkin spices in here. Maybe a little bit of ginger in the background, some warming nutmeg. Brown sugar, I wouldn't call out, except that there is a little bit of a sweetness to this, but it doesn't, to me, come from an edible sort of brown sugar crust, custardy sweetness at all. But it is just, really for me, this is the start of the deep fall season. It's not my transitional, it is, hey, fall has arrived, let's get into this. It is warm, it's a strong thrower, and it's kind of a beautiful, let's say almost right in the middle of, it's not as on the nose as something that's trying to be like a pumpkin pie, or even let's say that pumpkin chai from Nest. It's not as conceptual as your LAFCO's pumpkin seed and sandalwood. It's sort of in the middle there, where there's a conceptual angle to it, but everyone would be able to say, oh, that's a really lovely fall fragrance. And I think this is very, very unique. I really love to get the true perfumer's build of what are the actual notes in here that make up pumpkin carving, because it's so fresh and bright and warm and rich, kind of paradoxical in that sense. And that's a really lovely, if you don't want to put the money for a luxury candle, go for this when it's on sale, and you can get a really amazing pumpkin for $8 to $12 depending on the sale and coupons. So that is my overview of 5+ luxury pumpkin fragrances and candles here. Let me know what you think of this video, this type of video. If you've watched all the way through, I appreciate it. I did do a similar video to this on plum fragrances about 2 years ago. You can view that here if you have not. But I want to maybe explore that, go into some hearth, some fireside, some burnt wood, and other notes throughout the years as I kind of compile and say, hey, here are variations on what that is. And let's talk about the note. What is it? What does it mean? And how does it express itself in fine fragrance? Let me know what you think about this type of video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And until next time.